Well, it's 1 o'clock, so thank you so much it's great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. If you are here for the Future Ready Physiotherapy Education webinar, talking about data, digital, and the framework in action, then you are in the right place. I'm hoping that there are still people arriving. Should we just move to the next slide, Rosalie? Okay. Oh, we've moved on to the slideshow that we were on. We can click forward to the next one. All right, well, I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, and thank you for making the time to join us. I wanted to just go through some housekeeping first of all. And it's just to say to, please, all of you, could you remember to keep your microphones on mute, just to make it easier for the speakers to be heard. And that the webinar is being recorded. So if you want to have your cameras on, you can, but also you can have your cameras off during this webinar. The recording will be shared after we have done the webinar today. So the sign up emails that you used to sign up with, that's where they will end up being sent to. And the format for today is that us as speakers will go through our presentations, and then we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So to that end, we have a question and answer function for you to be able to put your questions to speakers and type them in. So if you could use the question and answer function to do that, that would be excellent for us. But we also have a chat function, which we have someone going to be posting some links into that would be helpful maybe for you to navigate what we're talking about in this webinar. But I want to also say that I'm joined today in terms of speakers by John Larner, who is an Associate Professor in Physiotherapy from the University of East Anglia. We also have Jackie Lidgard, who is the CSP Professional Advisor and part of the Physiotherapy Informatics Strategy team here at the CSP. In the background, we've got Rosalie Bevan, who is a CSP Project Coordinator, who'll be ensuring that the webinar runs smoothly. And also, Ewan McComiskey is our Health and Informatics Lead, and he will be checking the chat and posting links for you to be able to access some of the information. And helping monitor the Q&A function. If you go to the next slide, please. And just to say, hello, I'm Sandeep Watkins, and I am one of the education advisors here at the CSP. I'm also the lead for the Transforming Quality in Physiotherapy Education project. And my key role at the CSP is essentially quality assurance and accreditation of pre-registration physiotherapy education. And that is what is going to form the background and context to this webinar today. So if I go to the next slide, please, Rosalie. And that is really because as part of the Transforming Quality project, the CSP has recently updated the physiotherapy graduate attributes and also the Physiotherapy Education Framework, which is essentially what we utilise to benchmark quality assurance of education within the UK. And we utilise these documents as part of that process and ensure that programmes are mapping to these new frameworks and attributes. So in this update that we have launched in November last year, the digital and data skills that we are asking to be addressed is really a very important feature, and that will have impacts for curriculum content and programme design expectations for that CSP accreditation. We'll go to the next slide, please, Rosalie. So the updated framework contains 7 domains, and as you can see, we have got a specific domain related to health informatics and digital technologies in healthcare. These 7 domains relate specifically to program structure, design and delivery, and there is this new specific detail around that. This also relates to resourcing in terms of staff and student skill building and access to software and other support for this. So those are the things that we will be interested in looking at when we come and see program teams and talk about how their programs are being developed in relation to our quality assurance. I wonder if we've skipped a slide, Rosalie. So if you could go back 1 slide for me. We're missing. Now go ahead, another one. There should be one with the graduate attributes. That's it. Thank you so much. So our graduate attributes are organised into sections, and they align with the 4 pillars, and then also a separate section for what we think are going to be overarching graduate attributes. And these graduate attributes really link in with what we're expecting to see in terms of curriculum content and what our learners are going to be interacting with in those programs in order to develop their knowledge, their skills, their behaviours and their values that they'll take forward in their careers. And digital and data skills are woven throughout all of these attribute areas. And so we are really looking to see that that is acknowledged in those multiple aspects and to understand that learners understand how to utilise data in order to inform their decision making, their clinical reasoning, and also how to approach service improvement and quality assurance in other contexts. So I'll go to the next slide. Thanks, Rosalind. So the new framework was launched at a conference in November last year, and it's going to be used in accreditations from September this year onwards. And we in the education team are working to support programme teams in the meantime to meet the expectations of the new framework. And this links to the opportunities that are presented by accessing the Digital and Data Foundations programme. And that is the programme that I would like to then hand over to Jackie to go through in more detail. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep, and hi everybody. We really appreciate you coming along today. Like Sandeep said, I'm Jackie Lidgard. I'm one of the professional advisors at the CSP. I'm based down in the southwest of England, and along with Ewan, Rosalie and Matt, our head of research and development, I make up the part of the CSP that is the health informatics team. What I'm going to do today is to talk to you about our new online interactive digital and data foundation modules that the CSP has developed in conjunction with other professional bodies and with, I can see Claire is on the call today, so following some initial work with Keele University. So really lovely to see you here, Claire, and hopefully you can see all these modules coming to life. So what I'm sure Ewan will pop some links in the chat if you are interested in learning more about our digital and data work at the CSP, as it's a lot more than these modules and there's lots of things that we can offer physios from students all the way through. But what I'm going to do to start with is won't talk to you. I'm going to start with a video telling you what AHPs can expect from the modules. Little warning that the music might stay in your head for the rest of the day, and fingers crossed that the video will play. Thank you, Rosalie.
Data refers to any bit of information about a person. It's not limited to numbers or statistics. It can be in many different forms. Keep it short, relevant, and engaging. Don't just copy your full report. Create something tailored, like a leaflet, poster, or summary version. These can grab attention early and support your full report.
Hi, my name is Hannah Hare and I am a speech and language therapist.
I think the other thing is learning from others. So there's lots of people out there across healthcare doing things, and lots of people out there doing roughly the same thing in a different way. And it's not that one is right or one is better or one is worse, but there's a lot to be said about shared learning.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosalie. If you can move on to the next slide. As you can see, the modules have already launched, and I hope that's hopefully given you just an overview of what the modules look like and how they work when people access them and when people go into them. But essentially, what we've created is a core of generic foundation level modules, which are delivered in bite-sized chunks. And these modules themselves are supported by layers of personalized resources, which students can use to make the content relevant to their own individual situation. There are tons of reflective resources to help students develop reflective skills, and that they can save and that they can record for their own CPD. If you can go on to the next slide, Rosalie, please. So these reflections are integrated, as you saw from the video, throughout the programme, and they can be saved, they can be printed to the students' own portfolios. So if a student logs on and does the modules and then uses the reflective tools, these are something that is then private to them, or they can share it with anybody that they choose to share it with. And when we look at what we've got, things like the workplace resources can really easily be translated into things like placement resources for the students. So if they're on a clinical placement and they're carrying out an audit, or if they're on a leadership or a research placement, these modules can help to build their skills and can help them to reflect on what they've learned and think about how they can apply that in practice. So like I said, if they're doing an audit, or if they're looking at a pathway or a process across their placements, these resources are there to support them, and they're going to be similar resources that physiotherapists and AHPs are using in practice to help them to develop the language, the terms and the technology and skills that we want them to be able to use when they're chatting to other AHPs and other physios in practice. And if any students did in the future want to consider a digital career, we've got options for them so that they can think about that, they can look at that, and it will help them to take the first steps. We know at the moment that there are difficulties with physios getting their first jobs, and we want physios to think about all the breadth of career options that they can step into at different points in their career. And for a lot of physios, we know there's the options of stepping into, in the future, digital careers, clinical safety officers, CIO positions. The world is broad now for physiotherapists, and we really want to start at that graduate level, having them thinking about all the different options that they might want to do and where they might want to go. And like we said, the real key thing about this and about the reflections is the emphasis that they need to think about that application to practice. What we hope that the modules do is we'll take that learning, we'll take that reflection, and then we'll support those students to be able to make a change to their practice and help show their growth and to help show their progress, whether that is as a student, whether that is as a physiotherapist, that these modules will start that process and start that reflection, start that change in practice. If you could pop onto the next slide, please, Rosalie, that would be great. So as Sandeep said, we were thinking about the graduate attributes and how it maps to the programme. So we have got 3 key areas in the programme, which is data, digital service delivery, and improvement and innovation. And for any undergraduate students that are completing these modules, it really does support them to achieve the research objectives of the graduate attributes. So in thinking in terms of things like using databases, any technology-based tools, and them demonstrating that they're able to apply their information literacy skills. It can also demonstrate that they're starting to engage, or that they engaged with healthcare technologies, and that they've really considered how they can apply these to the delivery of care and then to those patient outcomes. So again, it's not about saying that they've completed a module on technology or that they know about the different technologies. It's about the students really taking that next step as to how this can work in practice. What does this mean for them as an individual physiotherapist? What does this mean for their service? What does this mean for their patients? So right from the start, we're thinking about building that bigger picture, building that holistic physiotherapist who is aware that decisions and training that they might take and they might do has that impact through the programme and through the whole of their career and what they're doing with their patients. So it can also help with some of those overarching graduate attributes that we know all students need to be able to step into the world of physio. So again, we're thinking about how that technology development can support that agile, evolving healthcare. Things are changing so rapidly in healthcare at the minute with the developments of technology. And again, we want students to be able to embrace this when they go into the world of work. We want them to be open to change, and we want them to think about how technology can enhance their practice. So it's really giving them the tools to be able to start those conversations, to think practically about how the developments might impact them and might impact their patients. And again, it's really key. It can help with supporting students to understand and promote digital inclusion and that equitable access to care for all of their patients. What we don't want is technology taking too many steps ahead and patients getting left behind. And physios are really key. We're super at understanding patient barriers, wanting to promote inclusion and being an inclusive profession. And these modules can help our graduates demonstrate that they are doing this. They can be used as self-directed learning because they are all online. And if a student was going to do the whole programme, it usually takes about 8 hours. So roughly a day of work for the entire course to be completed. We do also have options. So we call it the choose your own adventure, if anyone is old enough to remember those books. But instead of either finding the treasure or the pirates running away with the treasure and you don't get it, students can log on, answer a questionnaire about their own learning needs, and then they can be directed to modules which will support their learning needs at that time. And you can go in multiple times to do this. So it's not that you go in once and you only get to choose your adventure once. You get to choose lots of adventures depending on what your learning needs are throughout the programme. So next slide, please, Rosalie. So we were really keen to see how and if this programme could be used in practice and in undergraduate physiotherapy. So after a chance encounter at the CSP conference, which is a shameless plug for anybody who hasn't got tickets for Glasgow yet, that all sorts of exciting things happen at the CSP conference, we met the team at University of East Anglia, which is based in Norwich, and we were able to collaborate with them and work with them to see how the modules could be integrated into the undergraduate curriculum. And I'm now going to hand over to John, who is going to tell you more about that process.
Thank you, Jackie. Just going to share my slides. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so hello everyone, and firstly, thank you for joining us. My pleasure to follow on from what the other guys were saying about this exciting area that we've developed within our programs at the UEA. So I'm talking on behalf of myself and my colleague, Dr. Kelly Walker, both of us associate professors in physio at the UEA. And we have developed a new block of learning, a digital informatics module or block. And I want to explain that a little bit to you. As we go through, you'll see some pictures of our lovely students. There's a couple on the screen there now. And that's where they are basically pitching back ideas that they had, and I'll tell you a bit more about what that means, but that's what the photos are as we go through the slides. Okay, I'm just going to set myself a timer so I make sure I keep on time. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so just to provide a bit of context for all of this, those of you who are directly involved in education will know that we go through a regular 5-yearly review accreditation with the CSP, and at our last BSc course review, which was 23-24, we basically redesigned lots of elements of the programme. Followed on from a series of sort of stakeholder groups and workshops, including students, staff, educators, service users, experts in the field, and we developed a lot of new initiatives, and one of those involved year 3, and this particular one around digital literacy sits in year 3, and that ran for the first time starting September 25, and it sat within our physiotherapy theory and practice module. So just to give you a bit of background, the theory and practice module for 3rd years it's all year long, and it has sort of 4 driving elements to it. One is that the work that the students do around physiotherapy has increasing complexity and comorbidity, and that links with their increasing expectations around clinical reasoning. It has a strong focus on employability and preparing them for life after graduation. And then it firmly sort of focuses on increasing their independence and autonomy in all aspects of their learning. And it develops their professionalism along in the lines of the HCPC standards of proficiency. So it's preparing them, if you like, for what's expected for their next part of the journey. So redesign of the 3rd year particularly involved 3 new blocks of learning, each of 4 weeks duration, which gave us something to really get our teeth into. And we spent a lot of time trying to work out where we wanted to put the efforts in those 4-week blocks. And this particular aspect of digital literacy fits within the second of those blocks, block 2. And we wanted to do it because it's important. It is really designed to try and support the driver of the NHS 10-year plan, really to shift from analogue to digital. You'll all be aware of the need for this. I don't need to go over it, but the AHP Digital Framework in 2018 highlighted the importance of digital and data capabilities in supporting quality improvement. But actually, the growth over time hasn't really been quite where we would hope it would be. And this particular interesting piece of research in 23 basically said, despite the aim of digital transformation, it hasn't been fully realised. I would say quite far from it. And there's no consensus on the skills and competencies required for AHPs. And since then, the work that the CSP has been doing has been really interesting. So where do we go next? Well, we decided we first of all wanted to really understand what digital literacy was. So we consulted with the CSP and we formed a steering group. And that involves the people that you've heard from already and some others. I'll show you those in a moment. And we formed a steering group. And these experts helped us to understand digital informatics and education and look at how we wanted to embed it into our programs. And it all started with an interesting discussion at a dinner, actually, at Manchester at the CSP conference, where we met up and realised that we all had some very similar mutually beneficial objectives, of which Jackie has highlighted. So this particular steering group has been really useful, meeting every 6 to 8 weeks to help us to drive our design. So the next thing after this, we realised that we wanted to find a good way to actually apply this in context over the 4 weeks. So we decided to revisit a smaller activity that we'd done with our 2nd years before the new review, where they developed a behavioural change intervention for a community. And in doing that, they developed a creative initiative and then pitched it back, and they looked at resources and various other things. Students really enjoyed it, we enjoyed it, but it was quite short. So all we really did was scratch the surface, which is a little frustrating. So this gave us an opportunity to take that, and we realised it'd give us a really good framework for the digital literacy teaching that we wanted to do. So we then reached out for design and delivery to a range of innovators and entrepreneurs from healthcare, physio, and business. And together we created a series of sessions, and it followed on a series of concepts, which you'll see here. So the stakeholder analysis and needs assessment. So we related that to health choices and particularly physical activity engagement within a local community setting. The design of an intervention and the economic costing, resource management and sustainability of introducing that. Then business planning and creative pitching of ideas, and then using real life examples of data and digital informatics in healthcare in order to drive the students' understanding as they put into a hypothetical situation the use of data, and it explored the whole concept of digital informatics. So this isn't the team on the right hand side. This is another lovely group of our students. This is the group who did, or one of the groups that looked at elderly, and they're presenting their senior spotlight circus there, which went to a local circus in a local community setting, and they designed a set of activities for the elderly based around this historic circus building and activities, which was really interesting. However, this is our team. So supporting myself and Kelly was the steering group, of which you've already been introduced to several of the people there. And then a series of expert contributors. And this is the people that have been helping us. And you'll see from looking at that, without getting into too much detail, that there's quite a broad selection of different skills, including entrepreneurial skills, skills around economy and value and that kind of thing. So this was really important, that we had a group who could really help us to develop what we were trying to achieve. We also approached the local council, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment to help you understand. So the scope of this was to empower our BSc physio students in the development of their digital literacies. And the aims were to help them to co-design a hypothetical community-based initiative to increase physical activity engagement for specific target groups. And through this, they were to investigate these things. So that's the barriers to engagement for a range of target groups, the potential benefits and challenge of community-based initiatives, resource implications, factors impacting on startup sustainability, more from a business perspective, and then critically for this, the use of data to support all stages of design, implementation, and evaluation. So this allowed us to develop a program, if you like, for the 4 weeks, which combines taught sessions, group workshops, underpinned critically by the 4 modules of the self-directed digital informatics e-learning for AHPs that was highlighted by Jackie just now. And it was released in November. The timing of it all was absolutely perfect. So we integrated this and we used the learning outcomes from this to help drive the expectations of the group, of the module. So having said that, these are the learning outcomes. And I apologise, it's a bit wordy, as learning outcomes often are, but it's critical to understand what we're actually trying to evaluate and deliver here. So these outcomes that you'll see in a moment cover both the actual theoretical teaching and all of the outcomes that are overarching for the digital learning. So it combines all of those. So initially, to form good understanding about the health concerns for a target population, and through research and a business pitch, demonstrate that they understand the challenges for that group. To then to be able to design and justify an evidence-based initiative for the community to increase physical activity, and then pitch it in an engaging way to a group of stakeholders. And in doing that, to recognise and demonstrate the value of embedding informatics, to understand how data works in order to demonstrate the impact of what we do, and transforming service design, delivery and evaluation. To begin to identify how to safely and effectively collect, store and use and share data, to understand why patients should be put at the centre of that process, and start to understand how to embed a culture, or the importance of embedding a culture of informatics into the design and delivery of services. And then finally, to recognise the need to develop an informatics enabled service to support local population needs. And in this case, by applying digital informatics principles to a hypothetical community-based service development. So this set of objectives that you see, or learning outcomes, is what we evaluated later. So let me just show you quickly the trigger. And the trigger is what starts the student learning off at the beginning. So at the very start, they were given a letter from a local borough council, and we consulted our local borough council, which this is actually modelled upon, and they supported everything that we did and validated it, but decided they didn't want to actually be directly involved because they don't have the specific funding for this. It's hypothetical. Even though funding exists, they didn't want to really come in and take part in money that isn't perhaps there at the moment. But what they did is support what we do, and we produced a letter which showed the students that they should develop an initiative that utilises existing services and facilities, works alongside other like-minded professionals in order to create new and sustainable opportunities to engage specific target groups in moderate to vigorous physical activity. The letter invites students to present their ideas for initiatives to achieve the goal for one of these groups here. So I won't read them through, you can see them. There are 4 groups, and of course there are many other groups that could be included, but we chose these 4 groups, which are identified within the community as being difficult groups to engage with physical activity, or groups with specific health outcomes might relate to physical activity. Common groups in all communities around, but these 4 groups are the ones we targeted on. And we have a group of about roughly 50 odd students. So we divided the group into 2 halves, and each half took the 4 groups. So within each half, some students addressed each of the 4 groups. So what we ended up with at the end was 8 initiatives covering these 4 different target groups. So what I'm showing you here is a Gantt chart, and it I hopefully will visualize what we did. Along the top are the weeks and the dates, and this was in March of 2026, so really quite recently. And then down the left-hand side are the actual tasks, and the blue blocks represent the sessions that we had with the students, and the numbers represent the hour or the length of the sessions. And most of these were per half group, so they were meeting separately for their 2-hour groups. So what you see at the top is the e-learning modules in green, and there are 4 modules, and those 4 modules were spread within each of the weeks. And we allocated students 4 hours of self-directed time, so it's quite generous in terms of the amount of time they were allocated, but of course they have got lots of other mutually challenging things to do at the same time as this. So module 1 in week 1, 2, 3, 4, as you see above. And then in week 1, they were introduced to what the task was with the trigger, and then they had workshops to start to explore the target group that they were allocated, and begin to look at needs assessment and what sort of things were the barriers to those groups engaging with physical activity. And from a very creative perspective to start with, we tried to get blue sky thinking about what these groups might develop as interventions. So they had 2 workshops during the week to really start getting ideas for interventions moving and trying to understand their groups. And then they finished the week with a session all together, which was 3 hours long, from an expert on economic costing and looking at value, basically. So what this did is it took them from the blue sky thinking directly into what's really important. So we wanted to make sure they were grounded, that they understood what value really means to the groups, and they were able to make things evidence-based so that they could actually be creative, but at the same time produce things that were meaningful, so they get real learning out of it. Week 2 took a more entrepreneurial focus, and they had a lecture and workshop on pitching, so looking at how to be engaging in a pitch. And then they had a business planning lecture from an entrepreneur and CEO from a national company, and then a 2-hour workshop. And in the workshop, the expert stayed on and he worked with the students in the small groups as they took their own pitching ideas, or the ideas they would pitch, and looked at them and helped them with business planning elements. So it's a really nice interactive workshop with the students. In week 3, they had some self-directed time in their groups where they could actually start to really work on their pitches and their ideas, while the facilitators, myself and Kelly, were available for them. And then at the end of that week, they had real-life examples of digital informatics from a local expert in the use of that in Norfolk. And then she stayed on for a 2-hour workshop with each of the 2 half groups where they continue to develop their pitches, but she helped them to consider the way they were using data for their own ideas, or developing the idea of using data. So again, very interactive focus. And then finally, in the last week, they had some group preparation time at the beginning of the week. And then at the end of the week, they, in their group halves, pitched back their ideas. So they did a 10-minute business pitch, followed by 10 minutes of questions to a dragon's den. And the dragons were selected from amongst the facilitators and the teachers of the block. Okay, so in terms of what we really wanted to do, we want to understand if this actually has an impact. So we designed a mixed methods research project to explore students' self-perception of their confidence and competence in digital informatics, tying in with the scope of the whole block. And they did that before and after a 4-week programme of teaching, as I've just described. And this was UEA Ethics Committee approved. So they did an online survey pre and post the teaching block, and they did that within class so that we could make sure they completed it. And the aim was to evaluate their self-perception score, 1 to 10, 1 being not at all confident to 10 being totally confident, using the same 9 questions based on the learning outcomes before and after. They also, in the final post-teaching questionnaire, had 6 additional questions to explore the CSP e-learning package and what they found about their experience. So that is currently still being evaluated. We also then held a focus group afterwards, and that was used to explore their experiences in a bit more depth, to get some real nuances to their experiences. Things like, what's the value of different elements of the 4-week teaching? How did the e-learning program and the taught sessions and the workshops really affect you? So anything that we could pull out. And again, that's still being evaluated at the moment. And of course, the data was all treated in the way that's according to the ethics approved research project. So allow me just to present to you an overview. So the quantitative data from the questionnaires has had some preliminary data analysis. And I'd just like to put in a note that this is preliminary and it hasn't all been completely checked yet. It will be ideally be presented back at the CSP conference later this year in its format, and then hopefully will be disseminated and we can look at how it impacts. So here we have in this table the 9 outcomes derived from the outcomes you saw earlier. And there on the right hand side is the way the students scored themselves pre-teaching, post-teaching, and then the difference. So for the moment, this is based on averages. We are going to put it through SPSS, but for the moment, it's based on averages. We've looked at various things at the moment, and there is a general acceptance at this stage that a practically significant score is 1 to 2 on the scale, a change of 1 to 2. So what you'll see there is the differences, and it's good to see, first of all, that it went up in every category. You'd hope we wouldn't decrease their confidence and competence, but you never know, do you, until you've actually evaluated it. Fortunately, all areas improved. The most significant of those being 2 and almost 3 points on the scale was around the extent to which they feel able to demonstrate the value of embedding informatics into physio services, and the extent to which they feel able to apply digital informatics principles to a community-based physiotherapy service development. Maybe that's not surprising, as they are the main aims of what we were trying to achieve, but it's comforting to know that they scored well. And then we have high scores, almost up to 2, around the 1.8 in 3 areas. The extent to which they recognise the value of embedding informatics into services, the extent to which they feel able to identify and demonstrate how to safely, effectively collect, store and use and share meaningful data, and the extent to which they recognise the need to develop and deliver an informatics-enabled service to support local population needs. So again, a significant increase in those areas. We also have decent increases of 1.4 to what extent do you feel able to demonstrate how embedding a culture of informatics can improve the design and delivery of services, and the extent to which they understand the role of data in transforming physio service design, delivery and evaluation. We have slightly smaller increases, just under 1, for what extent they understand the role of data in demonstrating the impact of physiotherapy services, so the actual nuts and bolts of how they will do it in practice. And then the smallest was, to what extent do you understand why patients should be central to the process of design and evaluation of physio services? But of course, it's important to note with these ordinal scales like this, you see the largest increases, or the most significant increases, are larger within the median part, the middle part of any scale. The more you go to the extremes, those increases are generally more significant when they're lower. So the SPSS data should show that, or expect to show that. So in other words, making that simple, at the beginning, they already felt they were very confident in the extent to which they understood patients to be central to the process, which probably represents that students do really get reinforced the importance of including patients in every aspect of what they do. So they're already at 7.6, or almost 8, and they went up by 0.3. So almost at the end of this, just to finish off with a couple of things, we have done some preliminary analysis of the themes of the focus group, although that's yet to be developed, and therefore there are no student quotes or anything at this particular point that we've included. However, a few overarching principles that you'll see here. They were like the way we delivered it, which is always nice to hear. It did lead, as far as they were concerned, to greater understanding, which was borne out in the scores you've just seen. However, there were some elements that were challenging for them. And the group work dynamics, which were really important because they worked in these small groups right the way through, were affected by other things that were going on. So things like they had competing targets to their dissertation handing was just after this. So if one or two people in the group were affected by that and didn't contribute as much as they should, that then affected the group work dynamic, because it meant the others were working on smaller groups or having to put more effort in. So we know we've got challenges with that, but it's one of the big things about education is there are often competing demands of what we have to do, of course. Very interestingly, they highlighted that using more service or getting more service user involvement of the lived experience of these population groups would be helpful. And I think that's something we want to really focus on in the future. Interestingly, one group had contacts within the migrant population and reached out to the local migrant population group and found that very, very helpful. As the tasks were hypothetical, we didn't have a way of introducing that directly, but we'll certainly be looking at that for future years as an improvement. Very important. They felt they would like more practical physio-related stuff in the middle. That's very typical of students. They like to break up some of the workshops in theory with hands-on tasks, so that's something for us. And there was quite a lot around timing and integration. So these competing demands of the dissertation did impact on their focusing on the e-learning particularly. And I think we'll find out a bit more about that later. The fact that it was very relevant to practice, students raised it might be better as a placement block, which really is exciting. I'm not quite sure how we do that for all the students, but wouldn't it be interesting to actually do this in a placement setting? They wanted more signposting around how to integrate with the e-learning, which is interesting. So that's certainly something we can look at for the future. And they were unclear if the main drive was to develop a physical activity intervention supported by data, or it was to design a digital innovation. It was very much the former for us, but the second one there, it might include designing an app or something like that. However, the element of choice confused them a bit, and that's something we need to make sure we do in future, make it clearer what it is that we're expecting of them. And they valued this in terms of their employment and particularly the distinctiveness of completing the e-learning and the value that would have for them as physios close to graduation. Okay, that brings me to the end of my slides. I'm going to come out here now and then hand back to the chair, and then we can see what where we want to go next with questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, John. It was really interesting to see how you've integrated the foundation program into your program. And also, I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to view some of the student presentations, and they were really inspiring in terms of their innovation and also just how they really engaged with, you know, the task that they had in front of them and how they utilized their understanding of that digital and data element as part of that process. So thank you. I just want to ask if there are any questions from the audience today.
There's one in the chat I can see, John. So Claire asking, saying that the presentation was really interesting. Thank you, Claire. And saying, did you have any hypothetical population data for your students to work with?
Thank you very much. That's a really interesting question. We have lots and lots and lots. The particular community, the data was really quite critical. So where we started with this is we shared what existed out there, or the links to that, obviously. And we also put together some supporting information about each of the target groups. So what were the typical things that affected people, particularly in rural seaside communities, which this one was, for each group, and back that up with actual demographic data that came from this council. I think that was critically important. We wanted to keep it real. So yes, right the way through, we emphasised the importance of actually using real data. So we did supply that for them.
Thank you. I hope that's answered that question for you, Claire. Are there any more questions?
Yes, Sandeep, there was a question that came in through the chat as well, asking about whether the work that UEA have done is going to be written up as a blueprint to support other physio HEIs to achieve the graduate attributes, and then maybe even the potential to look at other allied health professions as well as just physio.
I'll come in there. Absolutely, yes. I think that was one of our overarching aims to start with, which was obviously to develop it further within our own university, but to outreach to other universities. And We will certainly be writing it up. The first thing we'll be doing is presenting it, all being well, at the CSP conference, and engaging with some workshops there. And from that point onwards, we will be doing some frontline work. I think quite soon there'll be something coming out in frontline, which involves also some student feedback into that as well. So it will start to emerge more. I just want to get my data fully nailed down, which is why I'm holding fast a little with some of those things, and then we will start disseminating. And the point that it can go out to other groups is really, really important. It isn't physio specific, even though I am in my thinking at the moment. So yes, we want to get this out. We'll probably broaden it out to our own group, and then people can decide where it goes from there, really.
Absolutely. And as far as we're concerned here at CSP, that we'll also be able to signpost to the work that's happened here and our involvement in supporting that. So that's how we will be supporting that dissemination part of this and signposting. Feed through. Any other questions?
Got another question, Sandeep. This one's more for Jackie, I think. So I was just looking to see if the CSP are expecting everybody to do the online program to become a digital expert, or is it more about improving the digital competencies as part of the toolkit? So do we need digital experts, or do we need these graduate attributes which have digital as part of them?
Thank you, Ewan. I think what we know is that not every physio either wants to be or needs to be a digital expert, but what we do need to have across physiotherapy, and by physiotherapy we mean broader, we also mean support workers, we mean physios across all grades and across all stages of their career, that to be able to work in the best way that they can in the current healthcare environment is that they do need to have a basic level of digital literacy, of digital understanding and capability within that field. And we know there's a lot of research that's been done, and John's piece of research that he shared with Leah Al is really interesting to show that we know that as healthcare is changing and changing rapidly, that the competencies of our physios and allied health professions isn't actually keeping up with where they need to be. So no, we love having physios in senior digital positions and having physios who are going along those digital and data careers, but we don't need every single physio to be a digital or data expert. However, what we do need physios and support workers and physio students to know and to understand is where the informatics, where the technology, where the data fits in with their role and how they can use it, whether that's to make a business case for expanding their service, whether it is to fight against losing a rehab space, whether that is to show their patients that they're a good service and they're achieving good outcomes. We know that if we're not collecting useful data that can be used to show the benefits of physiotherapy, that we're potentially going to lose out on funding, on resources, and lose out in the whole of the 3 shifts. So moving from acute to community, how do we evidence things like we need physios in those integrated neighbourhood teams that are developing? We really need physios to be using this as part of their toolkit and using informatics as part of their toolkit to make them better physios. So we don't need all of them to be digital and data experts, although we do love that physios are stepping into those roles now, but we want everybody, physio, support workers, students, to have that baseline knowledge of digital and data competence. And hopefully these modules will just bring everybody up to that baseline level. I always say that I am the token non-techie person in the health informatics team, and for me it's being able to show that I'm at a level that I can use it to support me to do my role, not necessarily that I'm the expert in all of those things. So yeah, baseline, but not everybody being an expert.
And just to add to that, in terms of in the education context, again, we have tried to just expand that thinking around research skills and thinking around how we build in an understanding of the use of data and informatics as part of practice, as Jackie mentioned. So those are the things that we're looking for as far as pre-registration programs are in terms of building graduate attributes. And that's where I know it's difficult to start from a point where you where you don't know where to start. And that's where then signposting towards the Digital Data Foundations programme is a potential resource to tap into to support any of that integration into programmes going forward. Any other questions? Thank you, you're keeping an eye on the chat and things for me.
I mean, I'm happy to just say I realised I didn't say as part of the sort of information I gave about the modules is that the modules are free for all UK allied health professionals. That it just involves students or any AHP setting up an account on the NHS Academy Leadership Academy and then going onto the NHS England e-learning platform. So although you don't need an NHS email account to do that, you can sign up on a personal account, you can sign up on a student account. So it's something that is free as long as your students are able to complete the sign up process, and some of them that may not be techie may need a bit of support with that. It's not something that is a cost to to universities or to students. We want everybody, and that was really key when we were developing it, everybody to be able to freely access that. And although it is for AHPs, we know there have been a couple of nurses sneaking on and a couple of non-AHP people sneaking onto it to look at the resources and complete some of the modules. So yeah, it's being widely used, which is great.
Thank you, Jackie, because that was one of the questions in the Q&A as to how to access the modules themselves. So thank you for that. Having a look now, we've got another question asking about if Jonathan has got any thoughts about plans to introduce your learners to the digital email modules earlier in the programme.
That's another good question. Theoretically or potentially absolutely right, because I think what we've done things like service improvement in the past or quality improvement, our approach has always been to introduce it in bite-sized chunks and integrate it throughout. There is a lot to be said from taking an approach, I think personally, where you make some of the basics explicit early so that by the time they can apply it, you can really get your teeth into it. So I would very much like to think that's the way it will go in the future. I think we just wanted to really get a good start, a good solid start in this program. But yes, I think some of these basic things should be introduced very early on. And then you can actually build each year, you can increase the level of complexity with which you're working in the same way we do with other parts of our program.
Thank you for that response. And then there's another question just from Claire. It says, could the panel discuss why this data and the mechanisms of data informatics is specifically different from data analysis and management than dealing with data for academic research or for service improvements? Thinking the question is asking how is the use of informatics different from what we do already, I think, in terms of research skills, or how we go about developing service improvements already.
Some of this will not be different. Some of this we were very aware that what we didn't want to do when we were creating the program was to create something that was just going to be a duplicate of mandatory training, or that was going to be teaching people something that they can already learn in other areas. And we're not saying that this is the only way to learn about data, or this is the only way to learn about service improvement. But what it is and what it has that is different is the fact that all of this easily accessible learning is contained in one place, and it's there for students to pick and choose what they want to do and to really tailor it to their learning. There's lots of other resources out there, but ours puts it in one place, lets students pick what's relevant to them, and it has those reflective aspects to it, and it is tailored to AHPs. So some of the personas there, some of the case studies that we use within the modules will hopefully help AHPs and physios to see themselves within those roles, and to see themselves right from a very early stage. Like I said, where it's open to support workers, physios at all stages of their career, to see themselves in the graduate persona, to see themselves in the persona of somebody carrying out a QI project, and to think, this is for me. and to take those very first steps. What the modules are is getting that baseline for everybody, and we really hope that people will take those next steps, that they will want to do more about service improvement, they will want to learn more about quality improvement, they will want to look at statistics, look at data. But what we're really hoping is that we can upskill everybody to that basic level with all the information in one place. We know physios are time poor, we know that AHPs struggle to prioritise and struggle to be able to find what they want. So by putting it all in one place and hoping that AHPs and physios can really see themselves in it, that's what we want to do. There's definitely other resources out there, but hopefully ours is one that's easy to get to, easy to access, and gets AHP started, gives them that little bit of interest in a subject that could take them anywhere in their career and will hopefully help them to be a better physio.
Absolutely. There's another feature of that programme, actually, Jackie, having accessed it myself as well to upskill in this area, in that it offers you a self-assessment. So depending on what you're interested in doing or achieving, you do a self-assessment at the beginning of the modules, and then it will signpost you to the particular modules that would be most relevant or helpful to you at your skill level right now, but also to achieve the impact that you're looking for in terms of utilising data. So maybe that's another specific feature of the Foundations programme that's helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Sandeep.
I don't know if there are any other questions that I've missed, as we're coming to near the end of our time. Well, that just leaves me to say thank you so much for to all of you for joining us today. It's been a fantastic discussion at the end then, and thank you for your questions also. I'd like to thank our speakers, so John, Jackie, and the rest of the team. Thank you also for all the preparation you've done in coming to this webinar. And yes, hopefully this has been helpful for those of you that have joined in terms of how we integrate the Digital and Data Foundations programme into a specific example within education, and how that maybe addresses some of the asks of the education framework going forwards. If you have any questions, then please do get in touch with us and we will be able to signpost you to the right people. So thank you again.